Some promising numbers and words today in the COVID lockdown world. New South Wales recorded just 18 overnight infections, and there's a telling breakdown in those numbers too. Just 2 cases, 2 spent more than 1 day infectious in the community. 16 are all linked, and that could reach 18 by later tonight once contact tracers and the lab do their work. The New South Wales Premier had her cheery but cautious face on today. But what will please 5 million people locked down in Sydney and 2 million more in the adjoining regions is that we'll know tomorrow whether these harsh restrictions remain.
What our community want is certainty. People want to know what life will look like beyond Friday midnight, and I'm keen to provide that certainty to people tomorrow so that people can make arrangements if they need to moving forward. But what I can say is based on the health advice, the New South Wales Government is very much not only thinking about when we come out of lockdown, but what coming out of lockdown looks like. And then in addition to that, what life looks like until the end of October when we have many more vaccines available.
And the media throng tried their very best to get tomorrow's decision out of the Premier today, but she was not budging. However, even if you've got another 3 or 4 cases from tonight, which had been circulating in the community, that will not be beyond the capabilities of contact tracers to circle and isolate. Sydney is not used to these lockdowns, especially wearing masks outdoors. In fact, that rule has surely got to be ditched from Friday night as well. New South Wales Health has confirmed that there has not been a single transmission of the virus outdoors, and that's since the very beginning of the pandemic. Even during this latest Delta outbreak, 0 outdoors. Masks need to go outdoors, and so too lockdowns from this point. Not only are we well versed in social distancing, hygiene, mask wearing in indoor venues, hotel quarantine protocols are improving all the time. No more silly limo drivers not vaccinated. Most of the vulnerable have been jabbed now, and 2.5 million people in New South Wales have been vaccinated, most of those in Sydney. Plenty of reasons never to consider a lockdown. Plus, today we heard that the Pfizer doses will be available in September, now not October, as we expected earlier. It is the Premier and her Chief Health Officer who should be restricted from calling another lockdown in Sydney again. Which brings me to another Premier, a risk-averse one, and there are plenty of those. And that attitude has not changed one iota. In fact, today, the Chairman of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, exhibited the most hypocritical attitude we have seen during this pandemic. Here he was last week. Remember what he said, saying, we're closing in on a lockdown-free Australia.
Everyone who wants to be vaccinated has been given an opportunity to do that. And then it's on them if they don't choose to get vaccinated. But we wouldn't be having lockdowns to protect people who weren't prepared to protect themselves.
But today, well, he should have booked himself a trip to Tokyo. He did a backflip with triple pike. Victoria cans the Formula One Grand Prix in November. Now, that's November, not July. That's the month, about a month away from when everyone expects all voluntary jabs to be completed, because the racing teams would not quarantine for 2 weeks before the race.
Us not yet being at a critical mass of Victorians and Australians who've got the jab, we're a long way away from that, and the protection and the freedom and the choices and options that gives us running big international events is very, very challenging. But until that point, we have to do everything we can to safeguard not bringing the virus in.
What a load of garbage. A load of garbage. You can't run a race in a bubble the way you run the AFL. We're jabbing at almost 1 million a week. Most vulnerable people are already vaccinated. Of course they wouldn't quarantine these people. 853 million people worldwide have had the jab. Just tell the racing fraternity to make sure that come November, they've all got one. Well, in fact, they can all have 2. The likelihood is that by now they've all been jabbed. And yet you want to lock them up for 2 weeks beforehand in November. He beats WA's Mark McGowan now, Dan Andrews. That is grossly risk-averse, flies in the face of his own plan out last week. And it also robs the state of Victoria of hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, which they desperately need, and maybe even down the track the right to ever hold the Grand Prix again. I said at the start of the week, the very start, it's all well and good for National Cabinet to have a plan out, but will the premiers have the guts to make their own informed decisions and not be guided by risk-averse medics? It didn't take long to get an answer on that.